Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today we're tackling the story of Enoch.
Yeah, Enoch. It's a name you probably recognize. But we're going way beyond those quick mentions in the Bible.
Right? We're cracking open the Book of Jasher for this one.
Yeah.
It's a non-canonical text, so a bit outside the usual biblical lineup.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so exciting. It's like finding this lost chapter, you know? It gives us a totally different perspective on Enoch's life, a much richer narrative.
Okay, lost chapter. I like that. So
Okay.
give us a rundown. What makes the Book of Jasher so unique? And how does its Enoch differ from the biblical version?
Well, for starters, it dives deep into his wisdom and leadership. The Bible just mentions he walked with God, but Jasher paints him as a true leader, a king, a teacher, guiding people, bringing peace. It's a whole different level.
Yeah, walking with God always seemed a little vague to me. What does that actually look like in practice? How did Enoch live that out?
Right. It's a beautiful idea. And Jasher suggests it's not just about piety, it's about living by divine principles, striving for justice and righteousness in everything you do.
So not just personal piety, but how you impact the world around you.
Exactly. And that's where his leadership comes in. Jasher says he was king over 130 other kings and princes.
Whoa, hold on. 130 other rulers, that's a massive kingdom. How did he manage that? Military power.
Actually, no. The text says his influence came from wisdom and spiritual insight. Other rulers came to him for advice, saw him as a conduit to the divine, basically.
It's like a sage king almost.
Yeah.
His authority came from something deeper than just military strength.
Right. It makes you think, what was so compelling about his teachings, even to powerful people? It wasn't about forcing anyone. It was about something more resonant,
Yeah, that's a fascinating contrast to how we often think about leadership, even today. It wasn't about political games. It was about something else.
Exactly. And that's one of the big mysteries we'll be digging into in this deep dive. What was it about Enoch's message, his approach, maybe even the time period? What made his leadership so effective?
Okay, so we have Enoch, this wise king, walking with God, respected by a huge network of rulers.
Yeah.
But there's this other layer to his story, right? Those retreats he would take.
Yeah, the withdrawals. It wasn't about stepping down from being king, but rather stepping back to connect more deeply with the divine.
Like spiritual retreats.
Yeah.
Intense meditation, getting divine inspiration. But how did he balance that with being a king? Did everyone just carry on without him?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. The text suggests those retreats actually made him even more influential. People saw them as proof of his connection to the divine, It's like the more he withdrew, the more they revered him, almost afraid to approach him when he returned.
I can see that. It's like the less accessible he was, the more intriguing he became.
Right, and it suggests a different way of thinking about leadership. It's not always about being constantly visible and active. Sometimes stepping back to seek renewal, deeper understanding. That can actually strengthen your influence.
That's a powerful point, especially in today's world where it's all go, go, go. But Enoch's story suggests there's power in quiet reflection too.
Absolutely, leading from a place of inner strength, wisdom.
Okay, so we've got this leader connected to the divine, influencing tons of rulers, periodically going on these retreats. It all seems to be going pretty smoothly. But I have a feeling things are about to get a little more dramatic, right?
You read my mind. Enoch's story doesn't end with a peaceful retirement. In fact, it ends with one of the most amazing events described in the Book of Jasher, his final ascent into heaven.
Ah, here we go. I knew it. Jasher is known for its vivid description, so tell us, how does it depict this final ascent?
Picture this. An angel descends from heaven, calls out to Enoch, then this incredible horse appears, straight from the heavens, ready to carry him upwards. Pure spectacle.
Wow, that's quite the exit. And I'm guessing it wasn't exactly a private affair. Were there witnesses? Did anyone try to stop him from leaving?
Oh yeah, it was far from a quiet departure. The text says a massive crowd gathered, 800,000 people. They followed him as he prepared to ascend.
Whoa, 800,000 people. That's not just a crowd, that's a movement. So did everyone go with him? Did they all ascend?
That's where things get really interesting. As Enoch starts rising, many turned back. Maybe scared, maybe realizing they couldn't follow him all the way. But a smaller group, his most devoted followers, they refused to leave his side. They clung to him, wanting to share his fate no matter what.
Wow, that's an incredibly powerful image. What devotion? What do you think happened to them? Did they just vanish into thin air?
Well, the Book of Jasher doesn't explicitly say. It just mentions that the kings who'd accompanied Enoch sent search parties desperate to find those who'd refused to leave him.
So there was a real effort to find out what happened to them.
Yeah.
What did they find?
absolutely nothing. The
Yeah.
men were gone, vanished without a trace. All that was left was this snow-covered landscape, a silent testament to what had happened.
Incredible. It's almost like the landscape itself was transformed by Enoch's departure.
You're picking up on something there. The text describes the area as covered in snow, these large stones of snow. It's a stark contrast to everything around it, like a physical mark left by the heavens.
That's powerful imagery. So what about the hundreds of thousands who turned back? How are they affected by this?
The text doesn't go into detail about individual experiences, but it does suggest Enoch's ascent had a deep impact on everyone. Imagine witnessing something like that. Your leader, revered for his wisdom, connection to God, taken up in a whirlwind, fire, divine horses. It would be life-changing, really.
Absolutely. A story you'd never forget, passed down for generations. Did this event, in a way, solidify Enoch's teachings?
That's a great point. The Book of Jasher doesn't say that directly, but it makes sense. Seeing such dramatic proof of his connection to the divine would definitely reinforce his teachings, inspire people to follow his path.
So we have Enoch, a man who walked with God, taught generations, and ultimately ascended to heaven. It's an amazing story, but what can we learn from it? What's the meaning behind the spectacle?
That's the key question, isn't it? The Book of Jasher isn't just giving us a fantastical tale. It's offering insights into leadership, spirituality, human potential.
I'm really struck by this depiction of leadership. It's so different from what we often see. What makes Enoch's leadership so unique?
Well, several things stand out. First, his authority came from wisdom and spiritual insight, not force or manipulation. People followed him because they saw him as someone who truly walked with God, embodied those divine principles.
And that connection wasn't just something he claimed, he actively cultivated it. Those retreats, that contemplation, it's almost like he gained influence by stepping back.
Exactly. It challenges our assumptions about leadership. Sometimes seeking deeper understanding, renewal, that's what strengthens your ability to lead.
It's a powerful reminder, especially in today's always-on world. True leadership isn't just about constant action. It's about inner strength, wisdom.
Right. And then there's the impact he had on his followers. He inspired them to seek a more righteous path. And that influence seems to have lasted, shaping their lives and communities.
You see that so clearly in the image of those who clung to him as he ascended, risking everything to follow him, even into the unknown. What was it about him that evoked such loyalty?
That's the question, isn't it? Jasher doesn't give us all the answers, but we see his emphasis on justice, righteousness, living in harmony with the divine. Maybe it was the combination of wisdom, compassion, and that unwavering belief in something greater that drew people to him.
And we can't forget, his journey wasn't without challenges, balancing his responsibilities with his own spiritual growth, leading so many rulers while staying true to his own path.
Right, and that's something we can all relate to, balancing our duties with our own needs, finding meaning, purpose, navigating a complex world.
Absolutely. And Enoch's story gives us an example of how to do that. He didn't shy away from responsibility, but he also recognized the importance of introspection, of seeking deeper understanding. It's that balance, the inner and the outer, that allows us to truly make a difference.
Beautifully put. But there's one more thing about Enoch that I think is worth pondering. The Book of Jasher says he lived for 365 years.
Yeah, that always stands out. Is it hard to wrap your head around living that long? Do you think there's a symbolic meaning there beyond the literal interpretation?
It's a question that's fascinated scholars for ages. Some think 365, representing the days of the year, symbolizes Enoch's total alignment with the natural world, the cosmos. Maybe a life lived in perfect harmony with the divine will, encompassing the full spectrum of human experience.
It's a beautiful interpretation. Like he lived a life that was both fully human and connected to something far greater.
Precisely. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from his story. It's an invitation to think about what it means to live a life of purpose and meaning, to connect with our own inner wisdom, and to make a positive impact on the world.
That's a great thought, and one we can all carry with us. But before we get too philosophical, we still have more of Enoch's story to uncover.
You're right. We've covered a lot, but there's more to explore. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll delve into Enoch's legacy and how his story continues to resonate with us today, thousands of years later. Last time we left off with Enoch, starting his incredible ascent into heaven, with those devoted followers clinging to him, determined to share his fate.
It's such a vivid image. Really speaks to the impact of his leadership. But what happened to them? Did they just disappear with him? Poof, into thin air.
Well, the Book of Jasher doesn't say outright. It just mentions that the kings who were there, with Enoch, they sent out search parties, desperate to find the men who wouldn't leave his side.
So there was this real effort to find out what became of them.
Hmm.
What did the search parties discover?
They found nothing. No trace of them. Just the snow-covered landscape where everything had happened. A silent testament, you could say.
That's amazing. It's like the landscape itself was marked by Enoch's departure.
You're picking up on something there. The text does describe the area as being covered in snow. These large stones of snow. It's completely different from the surrounding terrain, almost like a physical manifestation of the spiritual event.
It's powerful imagery, for
Yeah.
sure. So what about everyone else? The hundreds of thousands who turned back, how did they react?
The text doesn't go into detail about their individual experiences, but it suggests Enoch's ascent had a profound impact on all of them. Imagine witnessing something like that. Your leader, a man revered for his wisdom, his connection to the divine, taken up in a whirlwind, fire, divine horses. It would be unforgettable, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. A story that would be told and retold for generations. Do you think this event, in a way, solidified Enoch's teachings?
It's a great point. The Book of Jasher doesn't come right out and say that, but it's certainly possible. Witnessing such a dramatic confirmation of his divine connection would likely reinforce his teachings, inspire people to live by them.
Okay, so we have Enoch, who walked with God, taught for generations, and then ascended to heaven. It's an incredible story, but what's the takeaway? What can we learn from it?
That's the heart of it, right? The Book of Jasher isn't just giving us a fantastical tale, it's offering insights into leadership, spirituality, the potential for transformation.
I'm really fascinated by this portrayal of leadership. It's so different from what we often see today. What makes Enoch's leadership so unique?
There are a few things that really stand out. First, his authority stemmed from wisdom, spiritual insight. Not brute force, not political maneuvering. People followed him because they recognized something genuine in him, someone who truly walked with God, who embodied those divine principles.
And that connection to the divine, it wasn't just something he claimed. He actively cultivated it. Those retreats, those periods of contemplation, it's almost like he gained influence by stepping back.
Exactly. And it challenges our modern ideas about leadership. Sometimes seeking deeper understanding, renewal. That's what strengthens your ability to lead.
It's a great reminder, especially in today's world. True leadership isn't always about constant action. It's about inner strength, wisdom.
Right. And then there's the impact he had on his followers. He inspired them to seek a more righteous path. And it wasn't just a passing influence. It seems to have had a lasting effect, shaping lives, shaping communities.
We see that so clearly in the image of those who clung to him as he ascended. They were willing to risk everything to follow him, even into the unknown. What was it about him that evoked that level of devotion?
It's a fascinating question. The Book of Jasher doesn't give us all the answers, but we see his emphasis on justice, righteousness, living in harmony with the divine will. Perhaps it was that combination of wisdom, compassion, and unwavering belief that drew people to him.
And it's important to remember, his journey wasn't without his challenges. He had to balance his responsibilities as a king with his own spiritual growth, leading so many rulers while staying true to his own path.
Exactly. And that's something we can all relate to, even if our lives aren't filled with divine horses and whirlwinds, balancing our outward responsibilities with our inner needs, trying to find meaning, purpose, navigating a complex world.
Absolutely. And Enoch's story gives us a compelling example of how to navigate those challenges. He didn't shy away from responsibility, but he also recognized the importance of introspection, of seeking deeper understanding. It's that balance, the inner and outer, that allows us to make a real difference.
Well said. But there's one more thing about Enoch I think we should consider. The Book of Jasher says he lived for 365 years.
Right, that always stands out. It's hard to imagine living that long. Do you think there's a deeper meaning to that number, beyond just a literal interpretation?
It's a question that has intrigued scholars for centuries. Some believe it might be symbolic. 365, representing the days of the year, could symbolize Enoch's alignment with the natural world, the cosmos. Maybe a life lived in perfect harmony with the divine, encompassing the full spectrum of human experience.
That's a beautiful interpretation. Like he lived a life that was both fully human and deeply connected to something much greater.
Exactly. And perhaps that's the most important takeaway from his story. It invites us to think about what it means to live a life of purpose, to connect with our own inner wisdom, and to make a positive impact on the world around us.
So we've explored Enoch's life, his leadership, his journey, that incredible ascent into heaven. But what about his legacy? What kind of impact did he have on the people who came after him?
That's the big question, right? We're moving beyond the events themselves and looking at the lasting impact. Because Enoch's story didn't end when he left. It continued to resonate, shaping beliefs, traditions, influencing how people understood their relationship with God.
It's like he became this, well, almost mythical figure, a symbol of wisdom and divine connection.
Exactly. You see that in how he's portrayed in later texts, different traditions. He becomes associated with, like, esoteric knowledge, mystical teachings, even prophecies. In some circles, he's seen as this intermediary between heaven and earth, a source of divine wisdom.
Wow, so even though he disappeared physically, his influence continued to shape spiritual and intellectual ideas for generations. Are there any specific examples of how that played out?
Oh, absolutely. For example, in Jewish mystical traditions, Enoch is connected to the development of Kabbalah. It's a complex system of thought that explores the hidden meanings of the Torah and the nature of God.
Kabbalah. Wow, so his story is woven into some pretty significant spiritual traditions.
Definitely. And some Kabbalistic texts even say Enoch wrote them. Like his ancient wisdom was still inspiring people centuries later.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So even though he vanished, his influence continued in these really profound ways.
Right. And it's not just Jewish mysticism either. Enoch also shows up in early Christian writings, often connected to ideas of righteousness, judgment, the end times.
Oh, like the Book of Enoch. I've heard of that.
Exactly. It's a collection of apocalyptic writings attributed to him. It was really influential in early Christian circles, and scholars still study it today.
Wow. It's incredible how one figure from so long ago could have such a lasting impact on such diverse ideas and beliefs. What do you think it is about Enoch that keeps people so fascinated, even after all this time?
I think it speaks to this deep human desire to connect with something bigger than ourselves, that longing for guidance, wisdom, something beyond our everyday lives. And Enoch embodies that, you know. He represents this possibility of walking with God, attaining a level of spiritual understanding that helps us navigate life's complexities.
And his story reminds us that leadership isn't about worldly power. It's about principles, inspiration, leaving a legacy that lasts.
Exactly. Enoch's impact went far beyond his own time. It rippled through history, shaping beliefs, practices, and it still resonates with us today.
It's amazing, isn't it? As we wrap up our deep dive into Enoch's story, I'm struck by how much it reflects our own journeys. We all face challenges, search for meaning, try to make a positive impact. And Enoch shows us that even when things are uncertain, we can connect with a deeper source of wisdom, inspire others, and leave a legacy that goes beyond our physical existence.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. Enoch's story is an invitation to reflect on our own path, to seek wisdom, and to live in a way that makes a difference.
So as we conclude this exploration of Enoch's remarkable life, we encourage you to think about what parts of his story resonate with you. What lessons can you apply to your own life? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? The Book of Jasher gives us this glimpse into an extraordinary life, but it also encourages us to think about our own potential for growth, for transformation, for making a lasting impact. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep searching for that wisdom that guides you towards a life of purpose and meaning.